Okay, we're live on the Serve Brew. Hey people, I'm Tori Townley, got my coffee, and I'm here with my buddy, Miss Heather Chaulk. Hi. You got your
Hey,
coffee?
got my coffee.
Got your coffee. Awesome. So today, like I said, this is Heather. We are really good friends. We're becoming more good friends. I love this girl. She's the outreach and missions pastor, director, coordinator, I don't know, at Itown Church. And they are doing some really amazing things. I remember the first time that I met you, Heather, Pastor Dino had sent me a text or something. He was like, hey, Itown girl, she's an awesome girl. You really got to connect with her. Give her a call. Find out what they're doing. I was like, oh, okay, awesome. And I think we played phone tag, which was my fault. And then when I got to talk with you, like my mind was just blown. Some of the ideas that you guys have. And just over that, I guess it's been a year or two since we've been kind of going back and forth, and just some really awesome stuff you guys are doing. So I'm excited that y'all are friends. And then I remember Serve Day a couple years ago, me and my dad started like watching all the social media for Servolution and just like reposting churches and what they're doing. And we were both like, this Itown church is like killing it. Who are these guys? They're awesome. And of course we love Pastor Dave and Kate and all the things that you guys are doing. So thanks for hanging with me today, Heather.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. If you will, just like take a minute to kind of share with everyone like what you do. I know you're doing missions and outreach together and probably a bazillion other things. So just tell me like what your role kind of looks like there.
Yeah, so currently I oversee, like Tori said, like all of our national and international mission trips. And then I oversee any of the outreach we do here locally. Obviously that entails also our small group outreach hub. And then I'm currently get to do, since I'm the female pastor on staff, I get to oversee a lot of our women's pastoral care. And by a little, I mean most of our women's pastoral care. So that's kind of the seat that I'm in right now. And it's just kind of the dream. So it's really awesome.
That's so cool. How did you like get into Itown? Like what's your story and how did you get into this role here? Multiple roles.
So my story with Itown is that we were looking for a local church. My husband's dad is a pastor here in the local area. And we actually were like, oh my gosh, they had kind of unfortunately dissolved the church. It was a little bit older of a congregation. So just, people were passing away, for being honest. And so it was just a season where we were ready to do something else. My husband was a musician for years and years. And so when he was back in the States permanently, we were like, okay, now's the time. And so one of our other pastors on staff knew a friend of mine who I worked with and had invited him during launch weekend here to Itown. And we were like, okay, well, that sounds cool. I was getting my master's at the time. And so I traveled a lot, coaching our speech and debate students. And so my husband actually went and was like, oh my gosh, you're going to love it. You got to come here. And so long story short, fast forward, I kind of just have always known since I was 4 that God's called me to missions in some capacity. And I think in college, I was like, I'm going to run away from that because I don't want to be an international permanent missionary. And God just kept bringing my heart back to like, that's not what I'm calling you to. It's not what I'm calling you to. And so the Lord's just kind of provided this role in a weird roundabout way of where we started attending. Like my heart was just for missions. And our Fishers campus, our main campus pastor, about 5 years ago was like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I think God's called me to missions my whole life. And he was like, okay, cool. Well, can you like start doing the back stuff for our trips? And so it started there. And then it started like, hey, can you come in for an hour? And then all of a sudden I'd gone through our internship here. I had graduated with my master's. And then before I knew it, I was here like 4 days a week, just unofficially interning until they hired me. But they hired me, actually, I was the children's director for a while, for like a year. And then when this role opened up, they moved my seat, which was really nice. So, yeah.
Wow. I remember you telling me that you were in the children's role and you're like, I was like, how does she do all this stuff? And I just want to say, like, I really respect and admire you for that. Like, just being like, whatever seat you need me on, I'm there. Like, yes, I have a heartbeat for this, but whatever it looks like, I'm going to do it. And even we were talking before we went live, like, I love how you are a family who's in ministry and you have children and you're married and your husband's a campus pastor and you're so willing and humble to be like, I've got a dream, but I'm going to be part of a team. And that's so cool. So like, share with me what is it like being in so many different roles and then your husband's a campus pastor, kids are all over the place. What's your style on on being all of these things? How do you do it?
I think I think if you ever lose the heart for what it comes down to, and that's the people, just of the city, of the area, for me internationally as well, nationally, just when you start losing the focus of what ministry is all about, which is just being the hands and feet of Jesus, it's really hard to make this feel like a job. And so, and I always said the second that happened, me and my husband, Brennan, would sit down and reevaluate what that looked like for us. But, that's just not where we're at. And so the encouragement for us in our house is, spend every night kind of recapping our day, talking about how, what do you see that I could grow better in, and how can I help you grow? And so just being able to be accountable, that's kind of the only way we can kind of do it day in and day out if we're on the same page. And just sometimes, in general, you can be like, oh my gosh, like today was a little harder. This was, you take so many times the emotions of other people and project them onto yourself because you want to help them, you can't, or et cetera. And so we're really lucky because we have each other on a daily basis to put things into perspective. And so for us, that's what a ministry family looks like, just refocusing and being able to organize. We organize a lot. Like, hey, these are the priorities. These are the meetings I have this week. This is what you're doing. And so that's kind of how we roll.
That's awesome. I love the integrity of that, just taking inventory and never like letting a day slip you by. That's so cool. And I'm kind of a person who I like to reflect anyway. So like, let's just come and debrief. Like I want to talk about the goods and the bads, and it helps you know where you are. So that's super cool. Now, what about like how, this is something I think is really cool. Some churches do it differently, but I like that your role is both international and local outreach missions. So tell me like how is outreach structured for your church? Like I know you're multiple campuses. How is missions and outreach one thing or multiple? Just snapshot, what does outreach look like?
Yeah, so I would even say it's almost broken down into 3 categories, because we look at our conferences as kind of our in-church outreach. And so there's someone else that runs that, but I do coincide and work hand in hand with Emily, who oversees our events, and in our events are our conferences. And so that's kind of how we think of outreach in the church. And then I kind of take over after that, where it's outreach is local. So anything we do here for the community, we actually kind of throw international disaster in that, ARC, Grow, anything like that we're kind of helping, church plants for other places. One of the things that I love so much, I thought was really unique, is that they just love ARC and the idea of planting churches and raising up leaders just so much that we've sent multiple teams annually to go and help with the church launches of other campuses. And so we actually had one of the pastors of a church that we love, SharePoint Church up in Wisconsin, who planted last year, that we got to go help plant. Actually, Pastor Brian and Bethany were actually down here last weekend, just kind of snuck in for a service. And so it was just really neat to see them. And so the relational area that we can kind of do with ARC and through churches, we can kind of bring back here as well. So with that's kind of the local, and then ARC and stuff like that is more of our outreach. And then when it comes to missions, obviously we have, this year we're taking, for the 4th year, a trip to the LA Dream Center. But for the most part, our international relations are also, I guess they kind of fall into outreach, but just on an international scale when we're looking at missions, because we do, like, if they need services or things that they need provided for them, it falls under our missions and outreach budget as well. So they coincide in budget, but they're different. We look at more of like the scales. So it's like in-house, national, and then international.
Cool. Cool. I love it. That whole church launch support thing is genius. I haven't heard of another church talk about that before. I'm sure that it happens, but that is so cool. Like, what an awesome missions opportunity. And then to look back and like, we help launch the church. That's such a good idea. I'm going to totally share that one with people when they ask.
And I think that people just like their launch teams and stuff, you always need help. And sometimes we've done it a lot of times where it wasn't even the first launch, it was like the second, we're like, there's like a huge crowd for your first launch sometimes, but your second, just to keep that momentum going and go like flyer the neighborhoods or whatever that looks like is, and I think it's like one of the things that our teams look forward to the most, like, because sometimes you can't take the time and the efforts to like take off for a whole week or, a couple weeks for a missions trip, but you can dedicate, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So yeah.
Wow. That's super cool. Like you hear about the whole disaster relief trips, and that's awesome. You guys are like I get a text from you like every time there's a disaster. What are we doing? What church? Who's going where? And I love it because y'all are just like, you're so like on pulse with what's going on, not just in your community, but in the country and the world. Like, I love that. You're just so in tune with the hurt and the needs, and also you're in tune with what's going on within your church and who's going to help and what's available. So super, super love that unique heart about you guys, and we can definitely learn from you in that.
Thanks for letting me bug you every time. I know I'm always like,
gosh,
something happened. Tori knows she's getting a text.
I love it. I love it. I'm just like, yes, they're on it. You're like on it before me. So I'm like, oh, there was a tornado. I didn't know. Okay. Let me research and then I'll get back to you. Oh, it's so cool. It's awesome. It. No. So, okay, all that, you have this, I would love to like dissect everything that you're doing, but I want to zoom in a little bit onto some of the specific local outreaches that you do, just because we're getting ready for Serve Day season, we're getting ready for Easter and all that fun stuff, and there's some specific stuff that we've talked about. I've just been like blown away, but what are some of your, like, what does regular weekly local outreach look like, and then what are some of your favorite things that you guys do?
So I would say regular is the small group system where we have, obviously outreach small groups that go ahead and infiltrate the city on a weekly basis. And so, there's a good chunk of those. And then we are just in a season where right now we're starting to try to implement once a month that we have something that we can get the church hands-on involved with. And so we do that with Build-A-Bear, which I think you want to talk about later, but in Thanksgiving, and there's this thing that we always do in the fall as well called, we call it our Restored Outreach. And there's a local organization called Restored that we're just so passionate about. They work with law enforcement to help them identify different what trafficking looks like. And so they've basically taken what used to be like 120 or so trafficking victims a year in Indiana, and basically like made it's around like 400 or so now. And then that was just last year in their first, and then like it was like 500 the second year. And then now they're like working on this year, but it's just because a lot of people don't know what they're looking for. And so just being able to have leaders that can do that. And so they basically give, when law enforcement finds them or goes in for a bus, they give them a little tote, because usually the girls only have the things on their back. And so, granola bars, water, shoes, a bra, underwear, a t-shirt, we give them an Itown shirt, and just a little invite card in there inviting them to one of our campuses. And so, just that's like, so little things like that where we get to have people come in and stuff those items and write a little note or a card. So we're working on a couple of those things. The current one that we are working on for this month is a new one that I'm really excited about. We're doing a baby bundle outreach. And so this will be next weekend on March 11th. And there's a local organization called Life Centers that are very similar to all the resources that a Planned Parenthood provides, except they never give you the option for abortion. So instead of the government gets funding for medical procedures. And so what they do is said, we're not going to do that. We're just going to be a nonprofit that offers ultrasounds and any, birth control, anything that a woman needs in the time of either being pregnant or any help for anything that they're looking for medical wise. And so what we're doing is they give them these little things called baby bundles that are full of bottles and the first 2 outfits for each month up until like 9 months. There's socks and bibs and receiving blankets, a cuddly blanket, a toy, a book, basically anything that can help humanize the baby. And so while a woman is taking a pregnancy test, they actually share the gospel with them. There's verses in their rooms just to kind of help share Jesus with each and every one of these women who feel like they may not have an outlet. But the big thing is that they're like, oh my gosh, they've found research-wise that the reason that women usually choose abortion over anything else is financial reasons. And so these bundles help really make the baby real to them and give them an option for hope, for being like, okay, this is real and I have the starter kit that I need. And so they provide for them throughout the pregnancy, but it's just that initial little bundle. And so we're stuffing those with cards, et cetera, for each. And we're doing 500 of them for 500 lives that are hopefully going to be saved this next year in Indiana. So
that's crazy. I got goosebumps. Like 500 lives are going to be saved because of that. That's so cool. And this is an organization that you guys are partnering with. So do they sponsor all of the supplies, or is that something that you purchase from the church?
Yeah, so Our giving view is always, so there's a lot of new believers here at Itown, which is just the heart is just very evangelistic here. And so what we love is that there's a lot of people who've been burned by church. And so the best way that we know how to make people feel great about their tithe and what we're giving is to be able to say, hey, Pastor Dave gets up there more weekends than not and says, hey, thank you so much for what you've done. We've actually purchased, 500 baby bundles and the items that go in them. So we're going to stuff these. You can be part of the stuffing process, but we've already taken care of it. Thank you so much for your generosity. And so that people don't have to make choices, I guess, and they don't feel like, hey, this or that. They just know that hey, I got to play a huge part in that, and so next week they can come and we asked for newer gently used. This is the first time we've ever asked for anything, but if people would like to hand over their newer gently used clothes from their kids, we're taking those to be able to give them extra clothing. So
wow. Cool.
I've got huge boxes of them already, which is crazy. Our church is just incredibly generous with stuff. So
that's awesome. Yeah, clothes. Oh my goodness, those can be snowball effect, but it's so much fun. I love it. Oh my God.
I'm looking through them and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cute. I mean, I have a 4-month-old. So for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love all of these.
Yeah. You're shopping. Sadly, confession, I'll do that sometimes too. One time someone donated prosthetic legs and set them on my desk. And then I came back and they were gone. I was like, oh my gosh, the legs walked away. Then I came back again and there were 3 and they were multiplying. I was like, this is creepy and horror show. Anyway, back to what you're saying. I
haven't had that issue yet.
Yeah, good luck. It might come. I don't know. But I think and love this idea. It's so obviously it's a fresh kind of thing. And I think it's cool because not only is it literally saving lives, like you said, but it's also something that you've provided so many entry ways for people to be involved with it, whether they want to give funds, whether they want to be hands-on with it, whether they want to pray, whatever, write cards, assemble, now donate clothes. And then I love that you're communicating the story. So you're bringing it full circle, look at what you were a part of and celebrating that. And especially for maybe if it's a lot of younger or new people to the church within the community, just to be fresh and be we're out to make the world a better place and you're part of it. It's so important to communicate those victories from the stage and from the pastor's heart. So I think this is such an incredible idea. Do you know if that organization is a national thing or is that just local?
They have 11 centers here in Indiana. Cool. So they're all over the state, but they're not a national organization. Or else I would send all of you to go help out because it's amazing.
Yeah. So we need to get on that. That's so cool. I love it, love it. And then you guys are also starting a prison ministry. Is that public knowledge?
It is. Yep. Tomorrow's our first night. So I'm very excited about that. It's just been something that I think has just been very prayerfully considered for an excessive amount of time. And God just really, really opened the door where they actually, this is totally supernatural, but for over a year, I've been trying to get in contact with different people in the prison system and just being shot down hey, we're too full, we don't need any more services, whatever that looks like. And then it was just supernatural that God just ordained this woman to have actually gone through our grow plan, and she's the volunteer coordinator for one of the facilities about 20 minutes away in Pendleton, and was like, hey, would you like to have Pastor Dave come and speak? I'm like, yes, but how about he speaks every week? And so that's kind of how that came about. And so the superintendent of all religious services here in the state, so he oversees all the chaplains, is best friends with someone who goes to our church, come to find. And so it's just been obviously a process, but it's been super neat to just watch it all transpire. So tomorrow night we start that.
Wow. That's amazing. And I know that's something that you've been praying for a while, and just to see it all come together, it's so, so, so cool. So
yeah, I'm super excited.
How do you obviously I want to know a little bit more about Itown, the vision and the culture. You said that it's a lot of new people and stuff. So how do you go about, you're the outreach coordinator, so you're seeking out the opportunities and what are the needs in the community. But what does it look like, the marriage between your congregation and their heartbeat and their gifts to those opportunities? Mm-hmm. How do you connect those dots?
Yeah, so we kind of got to look, and I think Pastor Dino said this the best when he was here preaching one weekend, or it was a first Wednesday, but had actually said, what's the biggest need of your community? And so fusing kind of what the biggest need of our community is and also what our pastors' visions are for their heartbeat of outreach. Because at the end of the day, like, God's kind of given them this amazing opportunity to share the gospel in the city. And so everything that we're doing has to fall under the passions that pastors Dave and Kate have. And so their heart is just women and children more than anything else. And so for us, everything that I try to look at first and foremost is, does it fall into a women and children's category? And if it doesn't, that's totally fine. And we have obviously a bunch of those too that we participate in. But if it doesn't, then how far off is it from like what the need is of the city as well? And so as much as, like, for example, like homeless ministry is amazing. And actually that's what I'm doing my small group over. But there's not a huge need in our community for that. There's a lot of amazing resources. And so we're probably not going to throw a lot of our resources into that at the moment, not because it's not amazing and incredible. Our small groups can kind of fulfill that tenet instead of the whole church, just because there's so many outlets that participate in that. But there's still right now, like, there's a bunch of new trafficking organizations that have popped up that fall obviously under that category of women and children. And so we're just throwing a lot of our weight behind them just to be able to get to know that. There's a lot of family ministries that take in, abused women and children. And so we kind of tend to go that way. And so, anything that can kind of fall into that. We work with the local schools. We do a teacher outreach once a year that just kind of blesses the teachers before they go back in because they're helping with the future generations. And so, it's, if there's stuff that the church, says like, hey, I'm a part of this and you can come and jump in this, I always check it out and meet with the organizations and see what it looks like. And, if they obviously have amazing ways that they reach a lot of people, I'm all in. But for the most part, I try to stick under the vision of what pastors Dave and Kate want for their heartbeat and the families here of our church and how they can get involved.
Wonderful. I think that's really cool. Like a church can't do it all literally and focus 100% on it. So I think it is important to define your focal point and let everything kind of branch out from there. And I love that you guys don't shut people down who have ideas to do other stuff, and you still put a value on it. But you're like, we're gonna put a lot of focus and energy behind this and empower you to do what is on your heart as well. So I think that's so healthy, and that's how it should be. And who knows what can branch out from it.
Yeah, and I think just on that note, I think the biggest thing is sometimes for me, it's just always really trying to discern, like, could this be an awesome thing that a small group could do versus this an awesome thing that like our whole congregation can get behind? Because I think so many times we want to do this really awesome outreach and then we're like, okay, but really this would be it would be better if it was more consistent, or it'd be better if it only was a couple people, or hey, they don't need the resources of, like they don't need 500 baby bundles. They need like 20 meal packs for this or that. You know what I mean? And so that's a big deal too.
You have to, that's like being an incredible outreach director, like to be able to translate needs into what is the solution going to look like and how do we respond in the best way. So I think you're incredible at knowing that language. It's that rhythm. It's awesome. So what about, like, you talked about your outreach small groups. I know you said you guys have, is it 11, 10 that you have now?
I'm gonna be a terrible person and not know the answer to
that.
Okay. I think it is.
I'm not a numbers person, so please, like, don't feel quizzed.
It is 10 or 11 though, but I can't.
Cool. It's fine. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Sorry, I hate it when I ask numbers questions, and I did it to you. Anyway, tell me some of those. Like, I would just want to know, like, what are some of the small groups that you have going?
Mm-hmm. So there's a gentleman in our church who I just adore, and his name is Andy, and I'm going to shout him out if he ever watches this, but he has done this small group since the beginning, and he finds the local needs of either people in the church or church friends or I don't know, whatever that looks like. So if they need like their mailbox fixed, or if they need a new room painted or something like that. And he's done it for a bunch of either, people who just elderly people who can't do it themselves, low income families who don't have the resources, whatever that looks like. And he has a group every Thursday night that goes out and just provides just whatever those needs are for anybody in the community. Sometimes it's church members, sometimes it's friends of family, whatever that looks like. So we have that. There's another one that works with different organizations every week. provides meal packs for students for a specific school who doesn't get fed over the weekend. And so they provide little packages that the school puts in their bags. We have an adopt-a-block that happens near our Castleton campus that just started, which is super. That actually, I should say real quick, like the 10 and 11 doesn't include the student outreach group. So we've got a bunch of those as well. And they do a lot of door-to-door work, or there's a bunch. But anyway, those are just a few examples.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, now tell me about I know you said you're leading an outreach small group, and the post that you put up this weekend like gave me the goosebumps. Come meet my friend Bob. I was like, oh, come meet Bob. I believe you. So cool. Tell me about that.
So our Indie Dream Center just started kind of doing a little bit of marketing. And so they just kind of popped up and are developing, and their pastor, Pastor Mike, has become a friend of mine and just working in the same circles. And so we met a few weeks ago and I said, hey, what's your biggest need? And he's like, honestly, I need volunteers. Like I have a bunch of students. He came from student ministry. And so when he stepped back to open the Dream Center here, he actually took about 150 to 300, depending on the week, students that help volunteer with him. And so they do a lot of adopt-a-blocks since it's new. And then we have a really large homeless community in our downtown area. And so he basically got a bunch of these kids who were like, hey, I just basically got saved yesterday, but I'm willing to pray with whoever. And they go out and he caravans them from about 30 minutes away to come do this homeless ministry, and they give them snack packs or whatever they need. And they're called survival packs, I believe, like socks and mints and, water, snacks, etc. But so I said, hey, I think it'd be awesome if we kind of jumped in and our church kind of infused with yours. And so we went ahead, and that's what my small group does. On Thursdays, we go out and just pray over a bunch. I now know a bunch of their names. It's really fun. Like there's probably a good 40 visible homeless people, and we split up into groups and just pray and see how they're doing, check on them with the week. And yeah, so it's super neat.
I love it. And I love that you are actively practicing what you're leading. And how does that help you? Like, I'm sure you're hands-on in some ways, but for you to be like, I am literally going to get down on my knees and look Bob in the eyes, like, does that kind of inspire you to keep going? How does that feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a level where you're encouraging others to lead groups, I just think it's so important that if we're going to grow our hubs in our local churches for our small group systems, if we're doing outreach, like we have to be the first examples of that. As the people that are saying do it, we have to do it too. And so I think more than anything, there's just I don't know how to say it. Like there's just a level of, of relationship that also needs to happen. And so, again, like this isn't an area that I work a lot in, specifically like the homeless area. And so I was like, okay, well, cool, let's do something different that I normally wouldn't do. And so that was kind of the goal, was to do something that I probably wouldn't normally pick for my group. But the other thing is there's so many kids in this Dream Center-ish program that he's doing that I just was like, gosh, like how many of those kids don't have a bunch of people that they get to hang out with? So I just wanted a bunch of people from our church to be able to meet these kids and get to know them and help their walk with God. So I'm kind of finding it as like a twofold. Like one, yes, we're getting to meet some awesome homeless people and get to hear their story, which is like my favorite thing in the world, is just to like hear people's story. And so what a cool way to do that with someone who's just willing to tell it and receive prayer, because what else could be more awesome? But then also getting to know these kids' stories. And a lot of them are like foster kids or single parent households and just gone through a lot. And so for me, that's the second half of the joy in all of it. And I knew that kind of going in. So I figured this would be an awesome opportunity.
Wow. I love it. That's so cool. And I always think about like serving goes in so many directions and so many dimensions. Like, yes, the direct contact to me is absolutely magical and enchanting. Like I'm looking Jesus in the eyes when I'm looking in people's eyes, and it's beautiful. But then to realize like to the left and to the right, you never know. Like there are so many, it's like Inception. And I always say that, like the movie, you're like, oh, I woke up from a dream and this is that, this is that, this is happening here. I love to see intersections. Like I love to see nursing home residents serving foster care kids, it's just so cool how God's love, when we're serving one another, there's so many realms happening. So very cool. And I love that you can see that. Not everybody does. So I think that's cool that you have those eyes, and it's going to be contagious. Like people watch how you're leading and doing it and practicing it, and they're going to start to have those senses too. So you're my hero. You're like a diamond in the rough. I love you.
It's
Okay.
very mutual and very nuts, but thanks.
No, whatever. Okay. So yeah, I wrote down, I wanted to highlight the whole come meet my friend Bob. And like we said, I don't know. I just think it's cool that it just became personal. Like when I saw your post the other day, I was like, this girl understands, like, it's not just an advertisement so you can get more numbers and do all this stuff and get people involved. It was like, no, you genuinely were in love with that guy and you wanted other people to have that same romance with the Holy Spirit through his people. So I love that about you. Now I want to
say something on that real quick. Like, so just for everyone else, like, Bob was just this homeless guy. He's downtown. He's super rad. He looks awesome, but he also had just lost his best friend. He called him his partner. Like, they've been running that area of the streets for on and off for 15 years. And he's just really passionate about just people talking to him. He said that the biggest thing is that he gets really lonely a lot. And so one of the things in our conversation was just telling me all about, we talked about Jesus and his relationships, and he's got a ton of siblings and all this stuff. But I found myself, and it's so easy to do this, where like we started the conversation and I didn't plan on being in a long conversation with him. So, he's on the ground and I'm up here and like the gaze is going this way. And then I could just feel myself being like pushed down by like the Holy Spirit. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, get down, and so we're on this, like, got down just to have this conversation. The relationship just completely changed. And so I think, like, for me, that was such an eye opener. Like, how many times am I like, okay, or I mean, we all do it, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna clean this person's yard and just be done with it real quick, and then forget the part where like it doesn't matter about the yard. The relationship is, and everything that we're doing is actually for the relationship. And so it was just this crazy moment, and it just really like shook me, because I'm like, how many times am I like, okay, we're going to get this done, or we're going to get here. Okay, on to the next homeless person. We'll pray for them. We got to get more people. And it's not about more. It's like, the individual. And so I don't know. It was a cool experience.
Dang, that's so freaking cool. That's one of my things too, is like being eye level with people. Change, like you said, it literally changes the entire experience, and it makes it not a one-way thing. And that's me, the magic of serving, like we were talking about, is it's not just you're going in to save the homeless person and all his issues. It's completely reciprocal. Like, I need you and you need me, and there's magic in that. So when we're able to stop and hear the story and look them in the eyes and realize, like, I'm broken too, that's where the beauty reflects. And I was talking about that with some of my mission team. We're about to go to Los Angeles Dream Center, and we were all sharing our testimonies to each other, just kind of getting ready. And I was like, this is stinking beautiful, because even though we're not sitting here ministering to anyone on Skid Row, we're sitting here sharing our brokenness and our victories. And because of that brokenness, I think we're all a least of these in God's eyes. When we're broken, everyone is least. And so that's when his light shines through. That's where the brokenness reflects his glory. And so it can't happen if we're not being humble. So that's super cool. Sure. I level that. I will never forget that you said that. You're my hero again. So beautiful. So what is, like, I'm going to get a little personal, if that's cool. You already did. But like, you shared a little bit with me earlier about how you got to Itown. Like, what is your story? What inspired you to be so hearted for people? You have such a burden for people who are broken. Like, what got you there?
My grandparents were missionaries, and my grandpa planted a bunch of churches in Mexico. And so my whole dad's side, that was what their life entailed. And so when I was younger, my grandma would watch me, and I just will always remember, like, for birthdays, Christmas, everything, she would like buy me books of like missionaries. And so, Gladys Allward and like Corrie Ten Boom, and like I would be reading them and like take them to school and do my book reports. And so I don't know, God just really, like, I'll be honest, like, the one thing that I struggle with a lot of things, obviously, but the one thing I've never really had an issue with is, like, I've always believed that God's real. God's always had like my heart, and like, so faith has always been decently easy for me. And so with that, I think just being like, okay, God, whatever it is, wholeheartedly, like, I'm out and I'm going to do this. And so when it came to college, and I was like, well, I'm not sure, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, God, I got like plans for myself. That was kind of a whole change in perspective. And so being humbled after that moment, I went and like, honestly, I was searching for jobs. I did this crazy awesome internship in Beverly Hills and was just like, God, like, I know you're going to like, this is what you have for me. And it was just all me and like what I wanted. And so God took a year of just like really breaking me down and being like, you need to see the people around you and stop seeing like what you want and what you think you need. And so it was kind of in that year where I was like, okay, God, I'm just going to serve my heart out in whatever capacity. And that's kind of how it turned like, back to coming in all the time and was like, I'm just going to serve. And I just couldn't like, I just brought all back to me like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. And this is really what I love. And really it's about like the people and who we get to reach. And so not being from the city of Indianapolis, I think God just needed time to break my heart for the people here. And so that delay in, what season I was in was literally just because God needed a season to like, to keep me grounded and be like, hey, see all the broken people that are here in Indiana. You don't need to be back in California. You're fine. You know what I mean? And so there's just a lot of things that led up to that. But that transition between college and finding a job and then taking more time to do internships and all that stuff just led me back to like really just God putting different people in front of me to be like, hey, see them and do this. So yeah.
That's cool. I love that he takes time to make sure that you do fall in love with people before you get into too much motion and doing too much stuff. He gives you time to be broken for them. That's so cool. So all of that to say, like, now you're in this amazing role and I look up to you so much. What are you like dreaming right now? Like what are you looking forward to? Something fresh.
Okay, first of all, you're like my favorite person in the world, and I always brag about how I'm so lucky to have you as a friend. So absolutely not. So reverse everything. But with that being said, I don't know. There's something I get to go on. So on an international level, I'm going on 2 of our mission trips this year. And I've just found that, we always say like, we get to go reach people in this area or this area, but really how much is it really actually about the team and just I love just watching. My goal on every trip is just one step for each person and taking them, that one step, whatever that looks like. So that means they, maybe get baptized in Panama, who knows, or get to just see something different, like let go of some brokenness, whatever that is. So that's my like super excitement for this year is just seeing what the common thread is that unites everyone that chose that team, because God totally, I that's what I love about missions more than anything is that every time you walk away from a missions trip, you're like, oh my gosh, God, that is why you put each and every one of these people together. And it's so fun when you like send in the names to the travel agent of like, these are the people that are actually going. And you're like, okay, what is it? Like, it's like this big, like fun mystery thing where you're like, I know God, you have ordained each and every one of them to be on this. And so it's just really fun. Like, it's like a little puzzle, like a little, it's like a game, I guess, but I'm like, oh my gosh, what do they have in common? So, and you always find every year on every trip, there's like a common, I feel like common thread that links everyone, whether it's like a death that's recent in the family or everyone can relate to that, or, 6 degrees of separation from something. So that's my year dream, I guess. I'm excited about that. It's been a minute since I've been on trip. And then, in regards to so again, next year, my dream is that we would add obviously more trips on an international and national level. And I have a couple ideas for that. And then I guess nationally, I would love to get really, the more we've been talking, we're really working on that, like trying to get a first, Saturday of the month to be able to pack things and do things. And so there's a couple months that still have holes, obviously, because we're just implementing that and meeting up with organizations about what that would look like. But I would love to get to obviously a point where that's more consistent. And then I don't know. There's something really, really neat about watching kids serve other kids. And so we have some of those things planned for Serve Day, where our on-campus activities will be families doing things for local community, the elderly or firefighters or whatever that looks like. But we're now working with our kids department to do one of our first Wednesdays, they do an outreach project before 7:00. And so I'm super excited to see what those look like and continue to build those, because if we can get the younger generation, and I guess this is the main goal, the big dream, Tori, if you will, but like the big dream was that our kids would learn and have a heart for other people. And then our students would also get to the same place, and then, college, and then that would go up. And so, we would just have a church that just wants to see everyone in the community touched in one way or the other. And I just want to be a church that sees people, like, you know what I mean? Like whatever we can do to be like, hey, that's a human, that's God's like child. That's the dream.
Oh my gosh.
But
Wow. I'm like writing down all my notes, making quotes here. If you could see, look how messy this is. You can't even tell. Be a church that sees people. That is the goal. I think that just reflects Jesus's heart so beautifully. And again, like I could say it over and over, but you grasp that and you have that gift, and it's going to be contagious. And you get the fact that everything is in relationship with each other. So, I have no words to say. I wish I did, but wow.
So, I mean, it all comes from you, so I don't know what you're. All Tori's questions or all Heather's questions get answered by Tori always. So whatever. Thank you.
It's not true, but anyway. Wow, that's so cool. I'm speechless. What if you had to give the world one big thought? I know that you said you want to be a church that sees people. What do you want the world to know? Is that it? Or is there, if you could leave these guys with one profound thing from you, what would it be?
Well, I just think we have a generation right now of students in, high school and college and young adults who are all ready to go change the world in some capacity. Like they'll sign up for like a 9-month DTS with YWAM, but they're really hard to get involved here in our local community because they're like, I want to do something huge. And so, I guess like as we're all probably battling this like super adventure generation where they like want to go do something crazy and awesome, is to figure out a way, just at least this is kind of my current thing, like how do we get them to see that all of that is still a need in our community? And so I think that's kind of the benefit of being like, hey, I'll bring this to you. And so I don't know, I think we all just need to be praying for like wisdom and innovation, because if we can provide the opportunities, like they'll branch out from like feeling passionate about it once they're involved. But like, it just makes more sense sometimes for people to be like, specifically the younger generation to be like, hey, I'm going to go like, for 2 years and go be a missionary here, which is awesome. And we need those, but not in the way that we like, you do that because you don't know what else you want to do. And if you don't know what else you want to do, like, let's give you options that you can come and change the world here in our community. So,
yeah. Wow. That's really crazy. Good thoughts. I love that you said the whole super adventure generation. It's true. And like, I'm guilty. I'm like, I was going to be a gypsy and go see the world. Awesome. There's a place for it if you do it right. But just, again, teaching people to see. And I've had this thought going around in my head lately about how like, all the artwork is there. Like God has painted the picture. We are part of the picture. The needs are part of the picture. It's beautiful, but he's asking us to help frame it so that people can see it in a new light. And so I think that's really cool. That's kind of what you're doing, is like, let's put a new frame around it so people can be like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I want to be part of that. That's what we're in. And just kind of helping there be harmony. So really, really cool thoughts, helping people.
And I know this is going to sound crazy, but it's kind of our creative director, Pastor Adam, is like one of like my really good friends. And it's really, really helpful to have him on my team. And like our pastors, like Pastor Dave and Keith, see the vision of like using that tool, just because of the fact that like, because again, you see people internationally like doing like their DTS or going for 2 years to Africa, and which is super incredible and awesome. But people here are like, well, I'm not doing anything like that. Maybe I need to go do this. And it's all this social media generation, and so being able to be like, hey, look how cool things are here that we get to do as well, would probably like, not probably, like that's kind of also what we're trying to work through too. Again, like we want them to be able to, we also want them to like go out and do other things. It's just like, of course you want people to go like be missionaries. We need missionaries everywhere. But, as the dream, like we would also be doing things here locally. And sometimes I feel like that just gets missed a little bit because it's not as glamorous as some of the other stuff.
Can you hear me? There you go. Sorry. I think it's cool because sometimes, I'm not going to say this in a negative way, but I probably am. Sometimes outreach is so like random, outside the box. It's not always consistent. Sometimes it is, but sometimes creative won't put as much spotlight on it. And I'm not saying here, I'm just saying in general, I've seen it. It'll be kind of an afterthought, like, oh, you need a flyer print, oh, you need that. Like, it's not always a priority. So I absolutely love that Pastor Dave and the team are like, no, this is a huge priority. We're going to put our efforts into it. And that's super, super cool because, yeah, it's not always like that. So you guys get it. You're trying to help people see, and so you're going to speak their language. And I am obsessed with you guys. I'm coming to visit. Oh
my gosh, please, it'll be so fun.
People are going to be annoyed. Whoever's watching this video, they're going to be like, stop complimenting each other. Just want information. Oh my gosh. This is so weird. Cool. Okay, do you have any more final thoughts to share? Anything? Oh, we didn't talk about Build-A-Bear, but I think we should save that for when it becomes a little bit more holiday time. We're going to give people a teaser right now. So you guys, whoever's watching, they have an incredible Christmas outreach that they do involving Build-A-Bear, and we will give you more information when the time comes. Okay, stay tuned for a couple months. Awesome. Anything else that we haven't talked about? I'm sure there's tons, but anything else? Okay. If people want to get in touch with you and your team about anything we talked about today, or just to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
My email is heather@itownchurch.com.
Awesome. Easy. Cool. Okay, Heather with an H. Got it. All right. Is it cool if we pray?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be amazing.
All right. Awesome. God, I just thank you so very much for this time getting coffee with Heather. Jesus, I thank you for the incredible just treasure that she is, God, the way that she sees people, the way that she hears your voice and translates that to a world that is hurting, to people within her church who are just trying to find themselves and find their sweet spot in a world out there with needs like crazy. And I just thank you that she gets it. I pray that you continue to use her voice, God, use her senses to be a voice for the voiceless and to make a difference in all the directions that she's going, God. I just pray that you use her to be an influencer, God, not just within her church, but to other churches and other places, wherever she puts her hands, wherever she speaks words. I pray that it is just so life-giving and so anointed, God. And I pray over her and her family, her sweet family, God. I just thank you for the gift that they are. Pray that you continue to give them just unconditional love, give them extra grace, God. Just give them more time than they can imagine. Just even though there's only 7 days in a week, I pray that it feels like even more just time loving you. Give them margin in their schedules. And just give them peace and give them just this exciting year. Let this year be one like never before, just very unique. And I just thank you for this time, God. Thank you for what you're doing. We worship you, thank you, and love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, girl. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye, people.